First of all, I want to say hi to everybody, and thank you so much for letting me talk about this, Paul. I'm Lucinda Linde, Principal Data Scientist at Ironside. I'm focused on generative AI applications, so I work with companies to talk with them about what are the high value driving activities within their business, and then which of those could really be highly impacted by generative AI to kind of figure out use cases. So we do use case discovery. We do some, like initial scoping out to see like, okay, which ones are the most important for you. And we'll build a proof of concept. And then once we've really verified that it can work, that it's going to deliver the sort of thing that needs to make an impact on your business, then we start putting it into production. So part of the reason, Paul, that I haven't been able to listen to the news all the time lately is because I've been having 8 a.m. client meetings, as we are rolling one of the new projects into production. First of all, for this talk, I wanted to give an acknowledgement to Hamel Hussein and Shreya Shankar. They have developed, I think, the best evals approach for when you are tailoring evals to your specific use case. And we'll talk a lot about that. But I took their course in the summertime. It was 4 weeks. We got a lot of office hours. We got many like guest talks, as well as just going through step by step. I think it's a really great program. And so I want to just give credit to them. And also I'm going to be using a lot of their slides because it's the easiest way to present it without kind of reinventing it myself, but then it's really their work anyway. All right, what problems do evals solve? So one problem is that you may have shipped an AI powered application and it seems to be working, and then all of a sudden it might not work, right? And so your product metrics are going down. People are frustrated if you have like a usage, like customer support bot. You don't know what's broken. You start just, you don't know even what a good response is or a bad response is. And it ends up being kind of a game of whack-a-mole of trying this, let's do this tool, let's try and do this prompt, change this on the prompt, and it makes one thing better, but it makes other things worse. So it's really, you're dealing, you can't kind of vibe check your way to reliability. There needs to be kind of a more numbers and metrics driven process. So how exactly can you do that, right? You're dealing with text. How do you turn subjective text into metrics, which is basically what evals are? They're a systematic measurement of LLM pipeline quality. It's important that, because users want trustworthy responses, they want the consistency. You want evals used in your development as you are evolving and refining the application, because those then become the basis for monitoring production quality later on. It really does enable you to have the numbers that kind of give you the traction and the fulcrum to make your improvements. And to know that when you've changed this model or prompt, that it made this error improve this much, and that failure error mode, not improve that much. So the idea behind it is that, all right, so why not just use these, tools, right? Just let's get a tool and use it. The reason is because tools are okay for kind of generic metrics, but they don't deal with exactly what your use case is trying to solve. They can't evaluate your brand tone or make or the objectives of your use case. They don't know what problem you're trying to solve. There are no app specific metrics, and you have to make those yourself. These generic tools can't catch the subtleties of language as they relate to your domain and use case. And they don't know the error types that are associated with your use case. So how can you do something that actually addresses those things? It just seems so nebulous when you're talking about language. I'm trying to make this thing go. Let's see. There we go. Well, what's at the base of this, and again, this will be coming out in the details, is you want to First of all, analyze representative examples of inputs. Then it could be the prompt, the user, query, the tool calls, the responses, etc., that are there, and analyze those. And then you categorize different ways that it's failing. That it may be the wrong tone, or it may be that it gave the wrong answer or hallucinated an answer. You then measure these and you do them by counts. You translate them into qualitative insights into these quantitative metrics, and that allows you to improve. This is important because if you know that error B is 16% of the time and error A is 25% of the time, you can actually say, all right, we want to be able to focus our engineering efforts on error A first, because that's the one that fails the most and hurts the most. So just again, this is just an overview of the process. You take a bunch of inputs and outputs, you look at them and say, what are the failures, what's happening? You then group the failures into buckets, and then you can recode with different failure modes. So now you go back and look at all of your comments and you say, okay, these are the numbers that are there, that happen for each failure mode. And you can prioritize by frequency or times business impact, whatever way you try to prioritize it. So you need to do 100 of these. You need to get in the mud with your data. It is so incredibly granular and mundane, right? But people like to just give me the summary, give me the stats, etc. No, you got to go and look at 100 of these things and look at the response and say, would I want to have that response or whatever? And then say, it's not right. It's not the right tone. It's too casual for this buyer. It's whatever. But you just got to go and do that. And it's a little mind-numbing, but on the other hand, it pays big later on. So you do about 100 of these, and just to start seeing patterns. So what do you need to start evals? As I mentioned, you need 100 of these real use case examples. And if you can have them with edge cases and failures, packed with failures and a variety and diversity of failures, that's really very helpful. You want to have a rubric by which to make pass-fail assessments on real data. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then from these, you can generate accuracy, critical error rates. You can make, error types and cost and latency budget trade-offs. You run these after every improvement. You just keep having this golden data set. You run it again. Okay, this time we went from 16% for this error, went down to 9%. All right, how can we push it more? And another thing that powers this is judges. At first, you start with a human judge, that's a domain expert, and then or one or more. And then later on, as you're getting into the thousands of these things, you develop an LLM judge. You take the place of this, and then you need to be able to calibrate how good is the LLM judge compared to the human expert, and correct for those sorts of errors. So what to analyze? What is a trace? Trace is the full record of everything that happens in a response. It will include, if you have an agent, it's all the actions and messages, the tool calls, whatever the retrieval is, and a RAG, what are the terms that come to the top. It really captures the complete flow from the user input to the final output. And why should you annotate errors at this full trace level, especially with an agent, rather than do each little part? I think initially you want to do the full thing because you're just trying to say, does this agent do or solve the problem that it's meant to solve? Is it giving a satisfactory response, or an unsatisfactory response? And then there's some other tricks like, okay, go for the early errors because those can cause, follow-on errors. Annotating at the trace level avoids at the whole level avoids wasting time labeling every little symptom. So this is an example. Okay, so the example I'm going to talk through, you can't read it, but basically this particular one that they use in the course is like a real estate assistant. And what it does is if you are somebody who's looking for an apartment or a condo and you want to have pool and you could take 3 friends to the pool, or you want to have like a deck or a barbecue, all these other things, community areas, etc. They have all these different ways of finding out each property. What are the different amenities of those? So and then you have these on the left-hand side is the full query, which if you clicked on it, then it would give you the full query that the user had. And then it would go and get all this information and then it would put it together in an email and say, great, would you like an appointment at 3 o'clock on Saturday? Okay, so just get 100 of those queries and those outputs of the AI application. So the first thing you do is just code it and look at the results. So you focus on failures. If it's satisfactory, it's good. Okay, next. If it's a failure, you can say like, okay, for this particular use case, it had an empty set when it said what is the availability of this apartment. There's no answer. All right, so that's a no answer type of failure. And you're like, okay, is it the tool? Is it that the information wasn't there, etc. And but you can like think about that, but just say, okay, it didn't fill that in. Another error might be that it used a very casual tone with a professional buyer, somebody who's looking for a luxury or multiple luxury units. And so that would be another, it's like, okay, wrong tone for this persona. So you just write your failures and you're just open coding, it's open text. You're not judging, you're just being specific and descriptive. You're not looking for analysis or root cause. Do 100 minimum of these. Okay. Step 2 is called axial coding, and that's where you start to bucketize all these different notes that you have. So you review all the open coded notes. You can either just copy and paste them into ChatGPT or whatever secure unit that robot you have, and just say, I want you to group these into similar failures and describe the categories. So in this particular one, it may be that there is one failure mode where it hallucinated a tool invocation. So it was supposed to have looked at local events, but but there's no local events tool. Like we don't even do that for apartment rentals. And so try to call a tool that didn't exist. Or it may be that there's a missing or visual link. For example, if the person asked for the pool at this particular place, that this particular assistant was supposed to have also said, yes, there is a pool and here are the hours and here's a picture of it, but it didn't pull the picture. So it's like a specification failure. Whoops. Or it gives an unhelpful response. Like it says, wow, this is really great that you want to you should come visit sometime, right? It's like, no, you're supposed to actually book an appointment. So these are examples of different failure modes, and it's very language based and it's very use case and business based. Then the second thing is now you can start measuring. So you take your buckets, you count how many are in each bucket, and then you're able to start prioritizing, right? It's like, okay, if some things are missing parts of the answer 15 times, that's actually tells you something. Okay, that's a pretty big one. If hallucinated parts 4 times, it's like, yeah, okay, that happens. If I fix that problem, it's not going to make my success rate much better. If it's too verbose, trying to cut down on the verbosity is more important than trying to get it to be more verbose because it's too terse. So this is an example here that they used from the course of like the different types of errors and categorizations. Now you're starting to get numbers. Now you're starting to get something that you can measure and make it by. So your accuracy can be like, okay, I looked at 100 of these traces. 60 of them were totally fine, and then 40 of them had these various errors here. Yeah, and sometimes it could even be just like the wrong format or the output. I mean, just all different. Like you look at it and like okay, there's a problem with this. It's just not helpful or it's not easy to read. So then you can start to focus on the larger failures. So for example, here, this is like the percentage of what the error mode is. So here you've got the green, as these are all the good ones, success over here, although there's another green up there, that's the timeout. And then you've got this yellow one that says empty response. So it was supposed to have shown when the pool hours were. It was supposed to have shown when the open house times were, but it gave nothing. If you can deal with this empty response here, then all of a sudden you get take that yellow block out in terms of percentage, your rate, your success rate starts going up, a lot. So this is a way to, to deal with this. Now, the next one you might want to do is like, oh, I accidentally exposed some, IDs. So I got to deal with that. Or you may have done the IDs first because it's a much more severe and risky error. Okay, next is you want to have a domain expert to make pass-fail judgments on the AI response. And you want them to do it with critiques. So they're going to be able to say, I'm going to read this AI response, and I'm going to say yes or no. It's not like a 1 to 5, right? Because then you have to define what's 1, what's 2, what's between 1 and 2, what's 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5. Too complicated. If you just do that, thumbs up and thumbs down, it's a very, simple way to do it. But you also know what's good and what's not good. And then then you also want the critiques, and the critiques help you infuse the AI in your prompts with the subtleties, the unspoken understandings of the business. And that's where you start getting the subtleties. So you combine the pass fail with the critiques, and then you can start really having a means by which to, iterate on your prompt. Yeah, yeah, and they really advocate against not doing like 1 to 5 or 1 to 9 scales. So here's an example. User says, I need to cancel my flight booking for next week. And the AI says, your flight booking has been canceled. A confirmation email has been sent to you. So this is like technically a pass, but it's a little unnerving, right? Because what if I made a mistake in what I asked for? And now it's canceled. It should have asked for confirmation. That would have been the critique. It could have been a little better. So we give it a pass because it did the right thing. But on the other hand, now we've kind of developed like, okay, it maybe did it too much, and we should have like a buffer of a confirmation step. What's capital of France, like say for a travel booking one? Capital of France is Paris, and it did, yes, pass. It answered the question. But if it's a travel agency, then you may want to have all sorts of enticing things that you can do in Paris that you can go to. So it passes, but if you're looking for additional engagement, then you could add some additional text. I can't. So let's go to the bottom. I need help with my billing statement. And the AI says, please provide your account number and full name. So this is a fail because, basically the AI asked for sensitive information without even verifying the user's identity, which would which might compromise security and should guide the user through secure authentication process. So this is really a critical oversight. So you guys can look at these, but this is an example of the AI. So you got the query, the AI answer, the judgment, and the critique. And these are really what you need in order to be able to iterate your prompt for the AI application. So again, just, kind of clarity, it gives you clarity and focus. It gives you actionable insights. It forces you to articulate your expectations. And I can't even tell you, how many, like, one of the things I did, I was doing one for looking at resumes for a pretty technical position. We get 400 resumes. How do we deal with that? So I just sit down and I go through with the hiring manager. Let's look at like 20 resumes, and you can tell me, like, would you want to talk to this person or not talk to this person? And then tell me all the stuff. And it's like, well, they do have serverless experience, but it was 5 years ago. And that's not helpful to me. They do, they do know, they don't know DynamoDB in AWS, but they do know MongoDB, and that's good enough. So just by having people go through that with the users, you can really start to understand the subtleties, and you can put those into the prompts. And helps keep the evaluation process manageable and turn it into numerics. Again, the role of critiques is really to capture the nuances and to guide your improvement. And then after you have done that with your subject matter expert, then you may want to have somebody stand in for them, an LLM stand in for them, because now you're going to start be looking at thousands of things, right? So if you're scaling up to 10,000 and 100,000 and a million, first of all, you're going to be sampling most likely, but also you want to have an LLM judge that can take the role of the domain expert. And so then you can give it pass-fail definitions, like if it's too generic or passive or doesn't give enough information, or you can give it a pass if it acknowledges the ambiguity of something and proactively attempts to help clarify what the user's needs. And then also this is where you again use that golden data set to power and your LLM judge. So you take the first 10 or 20 and you put those in the prompt for your few shot examples. Okay. Then you can iterate with about 40% of them and be able to test and improve your prompt and your judge. Keep going until you get about 90% pass. And then with your test set, you keep 40% that the LLM has never seen, and you use that for your final unbalanced evaluation of the judge. So there's a little bit of data science. You basically have the train, the validate, and the test set. So it's really training, development, and testing in 8 evals. And so, yeah, so here's kind of the loop. You write your first prompt, you evaluate it on the dev set, you measure true positive rates. So how often did the judge say pass when the human said passed? Like, do they capture all of that? Are they aligned like this, or are they aligned like this, right? To use a Venn diagram. And then same thing for the true negative rate. So how many times do they catch the negative rates? What percentage of the time? Is it like 50% of the time, and 80% of the time, and 90% of the time? And then you inspect where the disagreements are. Like why did it not get this particular one correct? And then you keep refining. So this is your refinement of improving your LLM judge. And if it stalls, you may be trying to do too much, and you may need to split it into a couple of different sets. So again, this kind of says the same thing. You train with the traces. You use the few shot examples in your training. You look for a high true positive rate here. You improve it over time. If you still get stuck with less than 85% of true positive rate or true negative rate, then you either break it up or you try other things. Okay, so here's an example of, first of all, you have the AI model response, right? Then you have the critique, you have your LLM judge critique, and then you might have a human critique the LLM judge, right? So that's how to help kind of improve the LLM judge. You may still need your domain expert to be able to do that. And so basically the model said it was bad. Phil gives some critique and he also says it's bad, but then you have more subtlety into this. And then over time, you got your first iteration, your 68% agreement, and you get an 82 and 94. And that's how you kind of hill climb your way up to having an application, a generative AI powered application. So I'm going to leave it there and just look for questions from people on this process.
Fantastic. Really nice work, Lucinda. Lucinda, is this more complicated than you thought when you started this?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it would be nice if it was really simple, but it really involves a lot of subtleties. And it's actually amazing how much you need to be able to, like, for a lot of our consulting engagements, we don't necessarily interact with the client that much. We interact some, but I feel like with these generative AI ones, you're interacting a lot with them because you need to understand the subtleties of what is good for their business and what is good in their mind. So that actually has been surprising to me that my human to human interaction skills and then being able to translate them into better prompts is actually something that's pretty important for getting things better, getting the AI prompt better, getting the LLM judge prompt better, etc.
And Lucinda, say more about that. Is that because the subject matter expert's sitting over there at the client and they don't always know what they want, or?
Oh yes, you have actually they have the three gulfs of the three things that an LLM and our application has to be able to span. One is the gulf of specification, which means that the client has something in their mind. I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to translate that. So I'm trying to specify it properly. And then there's the gulf of generalization, which is when you're further on down the line and you say, okay, let's start feeding it prompts from the wild. And you realize, like, oh, it's really good on all the things that we actually trained it on. But there are people like who are asking all these questions we never thought of. And now you have to go on there. And actually, I'm not remembering what the third gulf of is, but yeah, but you've got a very good sense of it that yeah, you get the client knows stuff. They may not even know what they know, but you have to ask them. It's just like when I was sitting down with the hiring manager about the resumes and just saying, okay, let's look at this resume. Why would you want to call them back, or why wouldn't you want to call them back? And it's that turning that into a prompt that then can you then use. So.
Yeah, Lucinda, John here. I was curious, um, back in ancient history when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, my thesis was on symbolic AI. And, you know, obviously there's a whole craft of knowledge engineering, which actually had some pretty good science underneath around think a lot protocol analysis that talked about, what is it about why can't you remember a lot of stuff if you're an expert because it gets codified and, whatever, it gets essentially automated in your brain. And
Oh,
think about
okay.
protocol analysis done properly. Actually, it's not a bad way to uncover that stuff, which is not available to you in words until you're actually explaining it. Do you guys get into any of that stuff as you get into, both the knowledge engineering and the evaluation?
So to say a little bit more about that, like I don't necessarily use those theories when I'm talking to clients, but
Yeah.
like what do you
Well, you usually put together, there's a domain you're dealing with and you have an expert, and then you're asking a series of questions, and then when there's been implicit choices or explicit choices made is usually the fulcrum point. Why'd you choose this, not that? Why'd you go this way, not that way? And then you ask them to think about that, and then you do it again. You go another level deep. You're recording all of this, and then the transcripts after the fact look for what the implicit semantic network is in there. And so that, like, okay, well, they're actually working off a causal model or at least an approximation of a causal model. And
mhm.
there's just a world-class book by Erickson and Simon. Simon as in Herb Simon, the guy who won the Nobel. He's a guy I love to hate. He spoke 15 languages. He invented cognitive science. He got the Nobel Prize in economics. Whatever. Thank God he's dead, right? Because yeah, just a genius of a guy. Anyway, no, I mean, all kidding
We
aside,
psychologically analyze that.
yeah, no, and all kidding aside, he was really a wonderful human being and did a lot of phenomenal work. He teamed up with a guy named Erickson, and they wrote it's called Protocol Analysis, and by far the best book on the topic.
Yeah, so I mean we do try to just get out what is it that they actually want, and so yeah, I mean, as you say, there's some things that are just like they go without saying in their industry, and because they're talking to somebody who's not in their industry, then they end up being able to articulate it. So I think that's really one of the most exciting parts is when you can take their understanding and translate it into a prompt that then delivers them the results for some really time-consuming task that they would have to do otherwise.
Gotcha. I'll put for those interested, I'll put the reference in the chat here.
Yeah, other questions for Lucinda? Lucinda, how do you think about drift? Do you worry about drift?
Yes, yep. So you have to also watch for that as well. Like if certain error rates start to go up, then you have to start thinking about, well, why is that happening? Is there something that's different about how people are asking things, or is there did the model change, right? So now it's like behaving in a little bit of a different way, or whatever. But yeah, so there can be model drift, as things are changed under the hood. Um, yes, so you absolutely do have to monitor things, because if things are not happening correctly, you need to be on top of it, and at least be able to have, benchmarks that you've done in the past that you can compare things with and say, wow, okay, this data is looking so different from, what we did before. Um,
Thank you. Go ahead, Raymond.
That was awesome, Lucinda. I was looking forward to it all weekend. Um, so my question is, how do you manage client expectations with all this AI, right? They're hearing all kinds of things. They think it's a silver bullet. You're gonna walk in, take care of all their problems. And you were just speaking to drift, and these are some of the things that occur over time, whether
yep.
it's, how do you deal with the clients and let them know that it's not a one and done.
Well, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it for this, I mean, if you go there and talk to them about like, hey, we're going to do dashboards. Everybody knows what a dashboard is and kind of some good ways of how dashboards act, right? But then basically we're going in and we want to find out about their business. They're coming to us to talk about, like, we'll say, what do you want to use Gen AI for? And they'll say, what can it do, right? And so there's a whole mutual education that happens right at the beginning. And I think that's part of managing expectations at the beginning, and then trying things out. I mean, I think it's really important to say, that with these LLMs, the things that it can't really do today, it might be able to do very easily in 6 months. And you don't know which side of the jagged edge, that was it called, the jagged frontier that Ethan Mollick talks about, where it's an invisible frontier where you don't know if what you're asking for is within the capabilities of the LLM, or if it's outside, right? And then in 3 months it may be different. So I do think that it's very important to be, to just, and to also bring them along and show them, like, okay, here are the things. So for example, one of them, we were comparing answers of questions to a narrative, and I said, here's an example, here, look, it can do this. And they're like, well, we actually want to know, can it name the question that's actually the narrative is in conflict with? And I'm like, I don't know, let's try it out. So it's like, okay, we can name the question. So that's really good. So yeah, it's very, I think because, we're dealing with, we're putting all this new things together. It's so important to have an extremely close and conversational, relationship with the client as you go forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, thanks, Lucinda. Very nice. Question, have you gotten into situations, you mentioned this about you push on one thing and something else gets worse. Have you gotten into situations where things sort of get unstable? I mean, like when I'm using it for coding, I can get into situations where it really does get unstable. I've been working
Yeah.
very hard to figure out how can I get it to not break this when it's improving that. And I'm just wondering if you have any, even just very vague comments on when that happens more or less, or any experiences,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it happens more when you're trying to do a lot more, It's like if you're trying to do something that's really complex, and if you can specify it more, and I still love like giving examples. 3 examples are worth 1,000 words, right? And especially if you're trying to prompt your way to having it do something, if you just gave it 3 examples of good outputs, you'd probably get better results than if you tried to explain every little thing. So I do think that, examples is one thing. Being very specific, like I'm gonna show you the anatomy of a good prompt that they had in the course here. Just a second, I'm gonna bring back the presentation. And like, yeah, so this is really important here. Anatomy of a good prompt, right? I mean, it's got to have a role and objectives, right? It's got to have instructions and response rules. Do this, always do this, don't do that. It has to have relevant context and info and data. And again, few shot examples. I can't even tell you how important those are. Chain of thought, doing reasoning, outputting format, like say I want it in a list, I want it as steps, whatever. I want it in JSON. And then even just using delimiters like markup or structures or XML tags or JSON, all that stuff gives structure so that the LM is more likely to do what you want. So I do feel like that's important, but also with coding in particular, I'm trying to, whenever I tell it to do something big, I tend to get into that unstable mode. So, a lot of times maybe I think that trying to do something too big, but maybe take it into 2 steps, like do the planning part first, and then give me the plan, and then now take that plan and convert it into code or whatever. Break it down into smaller steps. They're pretty good at doing relatively small things. So that'd be my recommendation.
Thank you.
But Lucinda, I'm curious, and maybe Alden or others in software. So if I'm a customer and I'm paying 50,000, 100,000, a million, 5 million for this system, I'm going to start thinking about SLAs. So Alden, we've got, 5 nines for uptime. What's that equivalent over here? I want drift to stay within a certain number. I want, somehow to know that you're using the best intelligence, or I'm getting some output against those 100. Have you seen quality metrics on this, or is this just still a dance that can't quite be measured?
I'm interested in hearing what other people have to say. I
Yeah.
mean, we're doing some things with that, but I think we're, trying to be just cognizant of that, how, that we're defining a new thing. So yeah, I'd say it's an evolving thing right now.
Yeah. So, Paul, fantastic question. And I think it's going to happen in 2 ways, right? One is when people are signing up for the system, they will ask for benchmarks, right? So, like an enterprise signing up for our system will say, hey, make what are your benchmarks around accuracy and hallucination on simple QA benchmark, right? So you present those benchmarks, and hopefully that is good enough for them initially, right? I have a feeling that what you're asking was going to evolve, where people are now going to tie those to SLA at some point. They are going to say, okay, your benchmarks are nice, awesome, great, you're great, Lucinda, but now we are going to codify it on our data set and run our benchmark on our data set, and it better do 99.9, right? That's one way they are going to sign up for something. And then once you sign up for an SLA, they will make sure that there is an ongoing, respect for that SLA, and it's not violating those, right?
Yeah.
That's where I think your drift question comes into play.
Well, that's what I'm going. I mean, my background's been, SaaS deals, but I mean, it's $1 million deal. They are all over your uptime. And there's a whole thinking about that. And what's interesting about that, those are 2 or 3 year contracts where you don't have such swings in the software. So I don't know how to think about an SLA for a drift or an SLA for a quality thing when you get the advancing AI underneath. It's improving so much over the next 8 quarters. It's almost like once a quarter you got to sit down and have this more of a partnership with your vendor versus this, 30-year, 5 nines for uptime,
Correct.
$100,000 a day if it's not cured within, 2 hours after being alerted type.
Correct. Yeah, but Paul, if you look at things like hallucinations, they are very similar to uptime, right? Even hallucinations, somebody can write an SLA and say, we need to make sure that there are at least 99.5% on the hallucination benchmark. So that will make sure that, the stuff like drift is attacked. Like, and this is a great example because like every time OpenAI comes out with a new model, our systems go crazy, right? It's literally goes crazy, and their systems also go crazy. Like they always release like models that are just wild when they are released. So what do? We actually wait 14 days for them to get rid of all their crap before we even like consider putting it into the system, especially for this drift stuff, because we know that if we adapt it, like hundreds of customers will complain saying, hey, your hallucination is up. Or like the best example was where they released one model and it started answering in Spanish for English questions, right? And I would thank myself that we waited 7 days like to test it, rather than some other providers who, like, the day that a model comes out, they want to show that they're supporting that model.
And,
So those are good examples.
and Paul, all you really need to do is have an agent, an AI agent between you and the complaining client, and then you're safe regardless of what actually happened.
Well, wonderful. Lucinda, well, wonderful. Thank you so much, and really appreciate it. I know you've a lot of work into that, and it's a really important topic. It comes up a lot on the daily shows here.
Yeah, I
Um,
wanted to just share what exactly evals are because people are like bandying them around. And I'm just looking at this and saying, I know that they don't know what's going on here. So I really wanted to take people down into like, this is the level that you have to operate at.
right. Well, it's
Yeah.
good. So we got
So
this
I
recorded.
have
We're going to get it up on YouTube and make sure that others can jump in there as well. Go ahead, Alden. Sorry.
Yeah. So, Lucinda, I have one question. Like, when you're working with a client, right, you mentioned that they need to provide you with representative samples.
Yes.
Is that a blocker for your work?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But it's not a blocker. You can always like do some synthetic data to get started with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you just tell them, don't worry, we'll take care of it. And then,
Yeah. Yeah,
when,
let's make or like, let's talk through like what are a couple of examples and then make synthetic data out of that. So, yeah. So you can always get started somehow.
okay, cool.
Great. It's the last 8 minutes. Open mic. We haven't done this in a while. Open mic is when anybody can ask a question or share something you're amazed by, or talk about the $100 million NVIDIA is putting in OpenAI, or one of the things we were talking about with a handful of folks before we joined was I'm really enjoying the create an infographic, within OpenAI, and then once you create it, you can highlight just one area to fix it. So that kind of edit tool is really, really helpful for fixing a misspelling or changing a certain part of that. And it's stunning because 6 months ago it wasn't there.
So, Paul, what are some of the, I know that I was looking at a lot of the people who are going to be speaking at the conference, and I know that you had an emphasis on deployment this year. So how is
Yeah,
that playing out in the speakers and, what's going to be going on at the
it's
conference?
really great. I mean, one of the things we're talking about, we were prepping today, Bill Famwich is at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Michigan, and he's going to talk about the token explosion they're seeing. It's just through the roof. So they've got, more users using it. They've got users who are using it more intensely. The most human users only used it from 9 to 3 or 9 to 2. They have 151 agents in production.
Oh
These
boy.
agents are going like this all the time, slamming at stuff. Many of the agents are getting data and validating data here. So it's one of the most robust, and it's all in a regulated environment for showing something. Mike, you called me and said, I broke my knee. Is it covered under my insurance here? There's like 150,000 different variants of insurance. So there's very, very high accuracy on it. So they're going to be talking about SLAs. They're going to be talking about who bears the cost. Because the token explosion is so much, they've now had to narrow down traffic. So this is really, really good example of how this era of intelligent applications or ones with AI is totally different than the last 30 years we've had with software. So that's one. Um, we've got Eureka from UBS. She is one of the global investment managers, and she's going to give her another 10 predictions. And people were there last year. It was just fabulous. And it was the first time she got approval to give 10 investment predictions on where they're seeing here. And there's so much capital being moved around. that we're going to be
Yeah.
talking about that. But wait, we've got a whole lot. We've got probably we got, I think, 15 or 16 CIOs coming. There's a lot of discussion on Gen AI education for employees and upskilling. So we've got a lot of interest in that. We just got one company now. They're going to they contracted with us to train 750 employees in 3 weeks. So this notion that
Oh.
people need to really get moving on jump starting and catalyzing my organization, we're seeing a lot more. And another one we saw was a big PE firm called us, and they invested heavily in OpenAI enterprise for their 1,300 employees. They spent all this time, encouraging everyone here, and they had the same problem so many other people here. 5 to 10% of the usage is by these power users, and it just drops way down. And
Mm.
they know they've got to get this middle area up more, and how to market your head's going up and down. And we've seen this everywhere. How do you get this middle third to double their usage? Is it training or incentives or different people? It's really, really, and then we've now heard that 10 times, and some of the speakers next week are going to be talking about it as well.
I mean,
Yeah,
Bob just put in the chat, if you don't keep watering the plants, you just got to keep bringing the message over and over again.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah,
good.
I
Anybody else
wonder.
here? Yeah.
Oh, I'm just curious. My son got the new Apple phone with the Apple Intelligence, and he's my AI native. He showed me that when ChatGPT came out. And so I'm just curious what folks are thinking about that. I mean, it is pretty great. He had this long email from someone and he's like, AI summarize this, and like didn't think twice about it. So I'm just curious what people are thinking about the new iPhones and Apple Intelligence.
Anyone else try that? Or?
I'm on
I mean,
Android.
in general, I've heard
Gemini.
negative things about AI intelligence from Apple, but
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's nothing but disappointment for the past 2 years. Yeah, they just really need to figure it out. They just don't have enough competition, probably, that forces them to do that. But ChatGPT on my iPhone works so much better. I use that all the time. That's my go-to assistant on my iPhone.
But Karen, I think the employers don't understand what these college and graduate kids coming out next May who are using this 10, 20, 30 hours a week already have 5 to 10 robots with them. So they show up with a resume and robots and these superpowers. Uh, it's breathtaking. I know there's going to be fewer slots, but the AI enabled college grad is way better in many situations than the existing employers thing here. So there's a lot coming.
I
I
don't
think there's
know.
also just, oh, I was just gonna, sorry, one comment on the, um, I think the best technology doesn't always win. So we do have to remember that. And everybody's got an iPhone in their, the iPhone or Samsung, but it's always important to remember, I think, from history tells us.
Yeah. But I do think that it's pretty interesting because even though they do have like distribution, I mean, Google is way ahead of them when in terms of AI, and they have the same level of distribution. But I think Apple kind of sailed the boat when they didn't purchase Anthropic maybe like a year or two ago because now they're too expensive. And I felt they were aligned with each other as far as like a design wise and what they offer to the market, but now they're too expensive. So.
And speaking of Google, Alexander, I can think of like 4 or 5 anecdotal use cases where Gemini was better than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
John and I working here, he had an audio file he wanted to transcribe. ChatGPT couldn't do it. Gemini did it right away. I've got another buddy who had 3 or 4 OCR problems here. Claude and OpenAI, ChatGPT couldn't do it. Gemini did it right away. And Nano Banana is really impressive. So I think Google stop making announcements and start showing, and it's
And one more thing about Google, if you all have like a chance this week, take a look at their virtual agent economies paper. It's really good. It talks about basically the dynamics of the virtual agent economy, and I think that that's kind of giving us like a peek into what we're going to see more of like in the next 2 years.
Can you paste a link to that?
Yeah, sure. Let me see if I can
That'd be
find it.
great.
Also, agent commerce. They came out with some stuff this week. So, I saw at the conference last week.
Have they got it figured out yet?
Well, it's all about security, but yeah, there's something I put it in my
and
notes.
cost. Who
Yeah,
pays, right? So
yeah. But they're working on it feverishly because they know that once agents are able to, conduct commerce, that's going to be it. That's going to be it.
Gemini is really good with reasoning. It was a very good model, the best model actually with it until GPT-5 came out. I was always testing models on this question: how many R's are in the word tractor? And I would just put like 5 R's in there, and then R at the end. So there are 6 R's, but most models would just say, "Oh, there are like two R's in this word," But Gemini would just count them and it's just say, "Oh, there are like 6 R's the way you spelled it." And GPT-5 is doing it now, and those things are very important actually when you have agents that need to plan and reason and act. So that's why they're going to be ahead because of that.
Wonderful. Another wonderful learning lab, everyone. So thank you. So we're off next week. For the folks coming to our physical conference, let us know. And we are working on a virtual option right now. So hopefully later this week, we'll have validated and tested a way to at least stream for free the main session. So we've got a main session hall, and then we've got 5 breakouts. And we're looking for a way to stream the main session here. So look for more information on that.